Hello, British Lit Scholars, and welcome to the second week of the semester. All right, so we got through the first week, and I never did post that history quiz that I had told you I was going to post last week. I apologize for that. I just intended to post it on Thursday night, and one thing led to another, and we got to the weekend, and then we got after the weekend, and here it is Monday. But that quiz is now posted. It's 20 questions, all of them are multiple choice. The best way to take this quiz is to go ahead and open up that pre-1800s British history PowerPoint slideshow that is included in the PowerPoints folder on D2L. So if you go on the home page and you look on the left hand side, there should be a PowerPoints slideshows folder. Go ahead and open that up and find the pre-1800 British history, and that can help you. But not all of the answers are on that slideshow. What I want you to do is not just get a couple of answers right. I want you to kind of understand where some of this stuff why some of this stuff is important, because it will be important when we get into the work that we do. For example, when we discuss the French Revolution, which I think will be next week, you're going to need to know that while France was beheading its king and there was a big fervor about overthrowing royalty, England had already tried that about 120 years or so earlier during what was known as the interregnum. And England ended up putting their king back on the throne, or at least the son of the beheaded king got put back on the throne 11 years after the execution, and he ruled for about 20 years or so. So that's important information to have. We're going to mention things like the Magna Carta and the Declaration of Rights later this semester. Well, what are the Magna Carta? What are the Declaration of Rights? Whenever we see that. It'll help if you've taken this quiz and understood that both of these documents are cornerstones of British government today, even though the Magna Carta was signed in 1215 and the Declaration of Rights was enacted in 1688. So those are important. And most importantly, when we get to King Henry VIII splitting off from the Catholic Church and starting something called the Church of England, that is going to be tremendously important as we go through our semester and helping you to understand some of the arguments that are being posed in some of this literature we're going to read. So, very much, even though it may seem like, well, this is supposed to be a literature class, not a history class, understand that history will help you understand that literature. So that's why I've got that quiz on there, and why I want you to take the time to do it. That quiz will be due 2 weeks from today. And by today, I mean Monday, August the 24th, I believe is today's date. Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, August 24th. So, bear that in mind. This week we're going to do two of the early romantics. We're going to read the work of William Wordsworth, and we're going to read a poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The work of William Wordsworth is important because he and Coleridge jointly wrote the poems that went in a very influential book that came out in its first edition in 1798, and then would come out in multiple editions afterwards, known as the Lyrical Ballads. Now, the preface you're reading comes from a later edition. I believe it's the 1800 edition of Lyrical Ballads, where William Wordsworth is saying this book is an experiment to see how we're doing. Now, in order to understand why he wrote this experiment and why these poems that Wordsworth and Coleridge wrote were different from anything that other authors of the time were writing, it helps to understand that this is a reaction against something called the Age of Reason, or also something known as the Enlightenment. So what has happened here is during the Age of Reason or the Enlightenment, all problems should have been solved by using the mind. It was believed that if a person thought deeply enough about a problem and posed enough questions about the problem, then that person could arrive at any answer to any problem through logic. So people like William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who would become labeled romantics, said, oh, no, not so fast. We have other things to worry about here. Logic can't answer questions of the heart. Logic can't answer questions of things that science can't explain. So when you read this small passage, I think it's about 5 pages I've got you reading from the preface to the Lyrical Ballads. There's two things that Wordsworth is trying to do here in this preface. One is he's trying to define what poetry is and what poetry should do. And it's going to be different than what the Age of Enlightenment poets wanted. The Age of Enlightenment poets wanted to answer social questions with their poetry, or they wanted to poke fun at people who they thought were less than intelligent. Wordsworth is going to say, no, poetry should be about matters of the heart. Poetry should be about what we feel, about the pleasure we receive from taking nice long walks in the Lake District, or visiting ruins like at Tintern Abbey, which I did not have you read for this semester, but Tintern Abbey, if you get a chance, you should read it. It's about the ruins of an old monastery. After King Henry VIII started the Church of England, he closed all the Catholic monasteries, and many of them turned into ruins by the time Wordsworth and Coleridge were writing poetry, and people would visit these ruins, and they would have picnics there. And you can still visit Tintern Abbey to this day, although it's been cleaned up a little bit. The grass has been mowed, and there's been some structural work to preserve what's left. But still, he said that poetry should not just be about talking about social issues. Also, what does a poet do? And Wordsworth is going to make the argument in the preface that a poet actually speaks in the language of the common man and speaks to the common man, not to the intellectual elites like the Age of Enlightenment wanted to do, and doesn't use lofty words the way that the Age of Enlightenment poets would do. He actually said poets should write in everyday language to everyday people, and that the poet is a communicator and a representative of life, to be exact, to be honest with you. So, bear those in mind as you read the portions from preface. Then I'm going to want you to answer a discussion question about how what Wordsworth wrote in there applies to his poem We Are Seven, which is a story of a little girl telling a man that her family has 7 children, and the man saying, "Oh, no, you're down to 5, 2 of them are dead." And she goes, "No, 7 are we." So 7 are we is the title of the poem that you're going to read. And notice that the young girl is the main character of the poem, and she's not a princess, or she's not a goddess, she's not some super mythical creature. She's actually just an average little girl. So that's something to think about as you read 7 Are We. And then think about what you've learned in the preface and apply it to that. Then take a look at Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner is a tale of supernatural events surrounding a ship voyage. And by supernatural events, I mean things like albatrosses bringing good luck or bad luck. I mean dead sailors coming back to life or being reanimated. Ships that can sail faster than any ships known. These are all items that occur in Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And they are going to be much different than what Coleridge's best friend, although they did have a falling out, but what Coleridge's best friend William Wordsworth says a poet should do. So take a look in the 3rd paragraph of that posting about how Rime of the Ancient Mariner kind of deviates a little bit from the ideals that William Wordsworth poses. Now, for the discussion posting, if you look in the assignments folder in D2L, there's only one document in that assignments folder, and that is this one, the instructions on how to do postings. Take the time to open this, take the time to print it if you have the ink and the paper, but even if you don't, at least have it open and read it. This tells you everything you're going to need to know about the discussion postings. Now, it says that you're probably going to do a minimum of 2 postings every single week. I am trying to change that, so I really need to update this a little bit. I found that making students do 2, 3, 4 postings a week is not really good for the student, and plus it's extra grading for me. So what I'm going to try to do every week, and I may not succeed, I mean I can't promise it'll be like that every week, but what I'm going to try to do is go ahead and have one discussion posting and try to incorporate everything from that week into it. So this week we would be incorporating Wordsworth and Coleridge. Next week, maybe a little bit more difficult because we're going to get to the French Revolution and maybe the late Romantics. So take the time to print this up and read it. And I'll go ahead and read a couple parts to you. The part that starts right here, I don't know if you can see it on there, right here where it says, I will grade responses based on the following criteria. I don't know how to be more plain than that. I will grade the responses based on this criteria. that should tell you that what you need to do is look at this and see what I'm going to grade on and try to write to that. First, I will look at the thoughtfulness of the answer. Your posting should have a thesis and some development. Now, for a 3-paragraph posting, you're not going to have, great development, but you should have some development of a thesis. There should be a main idea. I'd like to see a thesis statement in the near the opening, maybe the first couple of sentences of the posting, and then everything else after those couple of sentences tries to support that thesis. That's what I'm looking for, is that you have some unifying idea that the whole post is going to be about. And then some development. You should have learned this in English 1101, 1102. Ways to develop might be to provide examples, direct quotes. In fact, I want you to use, you can see on number 3, I encourage you to use direct quotes. Remember to format your quotes correctly. Remember to cite your quotes correctly. But I'll get to that when we get to number 3. So, the more interesting questions you raise and the more valuable the information you have, the higher the grade will be. Note also it's better to have 1 or 2 major points and then develop them well than is to have 4 or 5 points and not develop any of them at all. So only a couple of major points. And I've kind of drawn up your outline for you. Discuss the prelude, discuss how We Are 7 supports the ideals that Wordsworth has, and describe how Rime of the Ancient Mariner might be a little bit different than what Wordsworth had intended. So, have some development of every one of those ideas. Second criterion, I will be looking at surface errors. I'll be looking to make sure you spell your words correctly, that you punctuate correctly, that your verbs and subjects agree, that your pronouns and antecedents agree, that your pronoun is clear, that you use good grammar, good word choice, things like that. That's going to be part of your grade too. So if you have these great ideas, but you have 25 sentence fragments in your discussion posting, you're not going to get a very good grade on that. Oh my God, please don't type your responses in text language. Make sure you use complete words and complete sentences. And then direct quotes. And make sure that when you use direct quote, you format it properly and you cite it properly, because if you don't cite it properly, you've committed a form of plagiarism because you didn't give proper credit to the author. We do use MLA format in my class. This is something you should learn in English 1101 and certainly in English 1102. If you've forgotten how to cite properly or how to quote properly, pull out your My Blank English book, or go to one of the useful web links. In the useful web links, I've got links to the MLA for the Purdue OWL. Use those to your advantage, and they can help you with the direct quotes. And then notice what I've said on the bottom. The best way to write these poems is write them offline in a Word document and then copy and paste them into the discussion board. Word will have tools like it will underline in red squiggly lines the words that you have obviously misspelled. It'll give you a chance to look it over, maybe save a draft and then come back and do some editing or whatever you have to do. But if you do type it offline first and then come back and type it online, I think you'll find a much easier time of trying to get these postings done well. So all this information is in there in the assignments folder. So if I give you 5s and 6s in the first couple of quizzes, or in the first couple of discussion postings, and you say, wait a minute, why am I scoring so low? Well, I'll tell you why you're scoring so low. It's because you're scoring low. It's because you didn't follow these instructions. I won't say you didn't look at them, but whatever your paper is doesn't fit in with what I'm looking for. Okay, so I've discussed the quiz, I've discussed the readings, and I've discussed the postings. You can also check your grades throughout on the grades section. And right now I can't think of anything else. If you have any more questions, go ahead and email me, and I will respond to them in a timely fashion. I did not answer everybody's questions about the quizzes last week because I got so many emails. I said, you know what, I'll just wait until Monday to answer them. And my answer is, now the quiz is open, and will be for 2 weeks. So let's have some fun. Let's enjoy this romanticism period. Wordsworth and Coleridge, I don't think it's too much to ask for you to do in the first week. And then next week we'll continue on with the romantics some more. And have a great week.